Amanda Carpenter, welcome to Paper Napkin Wisdom. I'm really excited you're here today.
Thank you, Govan. I'm super stoked to be having this conversation with you.
So we're we've met each other a couple times all online, and so leading up to this is a little exciting because I've gotten to know you a little bit better through sort of a semi-mastermind um, through a mutual friend. So this is really exciting. You shared an interesting paper napkin with me, and let's jump in. Stop waiting for an invitation, open to receive. Why did
Mm.
you share that with me?
Yeah, so several years ago, I was working with a really more of a mentor kind of coach and realized that she pointed out to me that I was playing small, that I was, waiting to be invited into rooms, waiting to be invited into opportunities when I knew in my heart from a place of like, grounded confidence and even self-love that I belonged in those rooms. But I was really too timid, too afraid, too negatively humble, to invite myself in. I was waiting for somebody to give me an invitation. And at the time, I was working in corporate and specifically in corporate in the utility industry, which is very male, masculine dominated. So I was waiting for an opportunity for a seat at the table in lots of different discussions based on my, background, my expertise. And they didn't know what they didn't know about me, right? But my fear, my humbleness, rather than to share it with them because that would be I'm humble but in a negative way, right? And so she pointed out, like, you have to share more about yourself, you have to believe more in yourself. And the other piece of that is like, stop waiting for an invitation, like, be who you are authentically here to be, show up that way and step right into those rooms, right? The other piece of it, the open to receive piece, was I was so much in my doing self. And what I mean by that is I was doing things from a place of, well, I achieved this before and it brought me to a level of safety and security. So I was doing things as a business person. I had built a holistic physical therapy practice, was successful, stepped into corporate health and wellness. And so I was in that doing. And it was pointed out to me, like, you never take time to receive. And there's this like dynamic, it was explained to me as a balance, but I've redefined it as a rhythm. There's a rhythm
Rhythm.
of doing and receiving, right? Doing and receiving. And it's really that doing. Where is the doing coming from? Is it coming from a place of fear to create future safety and security? Or is it coming from a place of I'm in my highest level of beingness? I am being, who I'm here to be on this earth and having the impact that I am. And the things that I do from that place actually give me energy. So I had to learn to, receive and allow and to turn off the doing from scarcity. I had to learn to turn that off and to open and receive.
So you've touched on a lot of different things, and I think it's really important for us to go through them. What is what is difference between humility and playing small in the way that you talked
Mm.
about it? Like, what is the difference there?
Interesting. Well, and I think there's a term for it, but it slipped my mind of like the way that I look at it though, is it like what's the energy behind the humility, right? Is it a place of fear of I'm not enough, I'm not worthy? And so we lean on or blame, like this is something I used to do, but I don't do it anymore, so that's why I'm not using an I. So like, I'm too humble to go. Like I'm waiting for somebody to come over here and, ask me to do something versus that being humble or humility from a place of my beingness. Like when I know my worthiness and I know my value and I know the impact that I can have on somebody, I don't have to tell them anything. But I'm holding that in my cells. And that would be the difference. There's only two root emotions, fear and love. So humility from a place of love, high vibrational. Humility from a place of fear, low vibrational.
Yeah. So I think that subtle difference is very difficult for a lot of people early on. Why do you think that's because like when you say it's a root vibration, for people listening, Amanda is very much into coaching and supporting people on energy and helping people notice, especially these, these burly male construction workers and utility workers, which is where she started off at her executive path. So she's comes to this energy realization. You come to this very openly. So let's talk about the difference. But because when you say fear and love, those are very obviously different, I think, right?
Mhm.
So
Yeah.
why is it confusing?
Yeah. So, well, let's talk a little bit just very briefly about the science of emotions, because it's actually we have heart rate variability, which is now, biohacking, and it's much more well known in the world. We've got things like the Oura Ring to track it, right? The Whoop strap. There's different devices and wearables to track heart rate variability. So our heart rate variability is actually associated with our capacity for health and vitality, all-cause mortality. Like the higher our heart rate variability, the less likely we are to die of any reasons. The lower heart rate variability, the more likely we are to die from all-cause reasons. So what actually impacts heart rate variability is the electromagnetic fields of the heart. And there's two rhythms of the heart. One rhythm is a coherent rhythm. One rhythm is an incoherent rhythm. If we think of what is the definition of incoherence, when somebody is incoherent, like they're not making sense, things aren't making sense,
Mhm.
right? Somebody's drunk, they're incoherent. So an incoherent rhythm, the vagus nerve is actually ascending. So as it goes up to our brain, if it picks up an incoherent rhythm in the heart, it puts us in our reactionary brain. So in that amygdala, that reptilian brain people talk about, right? If it picks up a coherent pattern, it gives us access to the frontal lobe of our brain, which is where our smarts live, right? So our smarts is like, all of our life experiences, what we've learned, but intelligence is the field of information. Like we've all had that, like, I don't know, it doesn't make sense, but something doesn't feel right. So a coherent pattern allows us to tap into that energy, that awareness, right? And every emotion, there's really only four different emotions. There's love and there's fear, but then there's high heart rate, love and fear, and low heart rate, love and fear. So that
Mhm.
incoherent pattern is fear. And if my heart is racing because I'm afraid, it's a high heart rate fear. If it's a sadness, a withdrawal, a pull away, an apathy, and I'm not worthy of playing small, it's a low heart rate incoherence. So we actually can measure like what's behind somebody's intention. But ultimately it comes down to our limiting beliefs that then feed the energy of our body. So if I carry a root limiting belief within me, which so many of us do, it's just slightly different, is I'm not worthy, I'm not enough, right? And that I'm not worthy, I'm not enough, I don't deserve love, I don't deserve money. Like it shows up in so many different ways, but it's such a root limiting belief and story for so many of us. So if I'm still carrying that limiting belief, that humility will have that vibration of fear, that incoherent pattern. It also then radiates out. If you and I are having a conversation and I'm coming from that humility and a fear base, you pick up on that. You might not consciously know, but like you can feel something is off.
Something's off, right? I mean, that's that feeling of something off. And that's the difference between someone waiting at the door for someone else to open it
Mhm.
and invite them in to a place they want to be versus knocking on it, right?
Absolutely. Why would you invite me in if I'm in a low vibe? Don't think I'm enough. I'm not worthy. I'm afraid. Like, why would you invite me in?
And
Right?
and that's sort of like the end of fake it till you make it part, right? Like that's why that stuff doesn't work.
Right, exactly. Yeah, because at some point in time, I have to step into, what is my value? What is my worth? And then when I know that, and I apply it appropriately, I walk into the room and they're like, yeah, she can help us, right? I'm holding. And the clients that I coach are very powerful, high achieving men for the most part. And I believe the reason that I've been successful doing that is I can hold their power. When I'm
Mhm.
in my highest state of being,
Mm.
I'm the mama bear full of love to them, but yet there's this power. They call me boss lady mama bear, right?
Yeah.
So when I learned to tap into her, there was all these invitations coming my way, right? But I had to walk in the room. I had to show up. I had to put myself at the table. I had to first see my own value and worth. And even that is like, coming out of the healthcare world, in the US, I was paid according to third-party payers and insurance companies. So originally, my value and worth was based on what they paid me, which
Mm,
is much, much lower. So I had to like unlearn that style and recognize, and a coach really helped me see that, our value and our worth, and this is what I work on with clients too, is in the level of transformation that we could provide for somebody by having a conversation with them,
yeah.
right?
It's
And it's
powerful, right?
always, yeah, it's always like we can't put price tag on it because it's life changing.
It is. It is. Okay, so let's go through this. You come at this, you're standing at the outside of the room, you get this great mentorship and support saying you're playing small, you're waiting to be invited. You stop waiting for the invitation, right? Let's
Mhm.
talk about how you built the confidence in yourself to be able to walk into that room. What did you do?
Mm. So that's so interesting. So I really went within and did a lot of self-care, allowed myself extra space in my schedule. So previously there was no space in my schedule. I was constantly doing because if I wasn't doing something, then I wasn't going to make money.
Mhm.
Right. So I didn't allow that space for when like just those aha moments drop in that like, this is what I'm supposed to go do. Right. This is what's calling me. So it was really allowing myself more space and time. Now, not to just sit and meditate. I think that's what there's a challenge for so many people like, oh, just sit there and meditate, and you're supposed to turn your thoughts off during meditation. No, like, I mean, I would do a lot of walking meditation. I would hike, I would go to the beach, I would look at the water. I was often walking the dog. Amazing stuff drops in when I'm walking the dog, too, right?
Mhm.
So it was just allowing myself that space to shift my heart rate variability ultimately, because nothing could drop in when I was in a place of fear. If I was in that incoherent heart pattern, nothing could drop in. That I didn't have access to that intelligent field around me. So,
So it's so cool because I don't want to miss this. Nothing could drop in, right?
mm,
Because I think that's really important. I think that I believe that we all have these energy buckets, and there are things that we do that fill our buckets. There's things that we do that fill up one bucket, and there are things that we do that are consistent with who we are that fill up all of our energy buckets simultaneously. They're high ROI. For you,
mhm,
you identified some, right? Like being on the beach, walking the dog, being outside with nature. These are things that fill multiple buckets. They're high ROI.
mhm,
But it's interesting, right? When your buckets are full, more can drop into them. When they're
mm,
empty, it doesn't work the same way. Why is that, do you think?
yeah. Well, so the way that I look at it is that energy that you just described, like I call that vital energy. We all have access to an unlimited capacity of joy, really, and energy that I call vital energy. It's an unlimited capacity. So our bodies, if we think about our bodies, like, do we run on a battery or do we run on fuel? I'd say we run on both, right? We have an electrical aspect. Our heart is electrical, so that's a battery aspect. But then we also have fuel of like, are we putting whole foods in our body? What are we eating, right? So the battery aspect, we want to look at like what drains that battery, what drains the charge of the battery, just like our cell phone, right? And what
Mhm.
charges that battery. And so there are self-care things that will charge that battery, but we can't do self-care just forever because a key piece to human fulfillment is we really are here to live in community and to have a role, right? And that role is like, who are we here to be? Without a role, we have no energy. People fall into a place of depression, which is a lower energetic state. So when we are stepping into that beingness, who are we here to be? We're actually charging our battery. So we might be doing something from there, but we're actually charging our battery. It's actually giving us energy back. So if we think of it on like the energy exchange in the body, it doesn't take as much ATP to do something when I'm in my highest state of vibration, highest beingness, as it does to do that exact same task from a place of fear and obligation. Right? How many
Mm,
times do we do a task out of obligation, and then there's even a little bit of resentment associated with that? Well, any of those depleted emotions drain the battery.
yeah, yeah. So, what's the difference between the titles that we're given, right? Like I want to even say boss lady mama bear,
Mhm.
right? This is something that people call you versus the role you have.
Mm. Yeah. So what I believe is we have a role from the time we come into this world, right? So if we go back to the first 8 years of life, in that first 8 years of life, our brain is in a download state. We don't know how to human. We have to learn how to human. So we're observing and we're taking on what we see as like these are the rules of humaning. These are the rules of life, if you will. And in those first 8 years, additionally, we cannot take care of ourselves as a human. So sometimes we exchange our authenticity, we adapt to meet the needs of our caregivers so that they will continue to provide food, water, shelter. So let me dig into that just a little bit more. Like a mama bear, like literally a bear out in the woods, will take care of her cubs for 1 to 2 years, right? And then they're kind of off on their own. So humans really can't survive on their own until about the age of 8 years old. We need somebody to provide food, water, shelter, safety to us. So what happens is our root nervous systems, which are very animalistic, will sometimes be like, well, mom is sad or dad is sad. I better make dad happy so dad can continue doing what he's doing and take care of the family. Now, this is completely subconscious, right? This is part of our like animal behavior, but this is what happens. And so I really believe that those different experiences set us up to give us the expertise that we're going to carry throughout life. Right? No, I don't believe anybody's an expert in anything until they've held the emotional experience of something. Because when we are in the emotional experience of something, all rationalization goes out the window, right? So, for example, an oncologist who they themselves have never had cancer or a loved one that has cancer, they don't understand the life decisions and the desperation. They might know the science, but like to turn that into a decision, right? That's where I think the expertise comes from. So having these life experiences and holding the emotional experience of these different things sets us up, right? We now have an expertise. So mine was a caregiver. At the age of 6 years old, my dad had a very bad accident, and I did become like his, emotional support and caregiver. And I also was the protector of my brother. My brother was 3 years old at the time, and it became like my role. Nobody gave me that role, but it became my role to be the caregiver. And there was also a teacher component to it as well. I used to force my brother to play school. There was very much a teacher component. So for a long time, I carried the caregiver and kind of teacher role. And if I look at what I did through my teenage years, what profession I even went into as a physical therapist, right? I very much was a caregiver and a teacher. I was teaching people how to take care of themselves, right? So not knowing any better, the things that I did to fulfill that role were from that place of doing, from a place of fear-based, this is what I have to do.
Mhm.
But I believe when we step into our beingness, we discern what we say yes to and what we say no to, based on who we are, the vibration that we're carrying. So so that caregiver, me doing it, has turned into facilitator, right? So I facilitate the healing of others if they choose, but they have to be an active participant. I'm not going to carry it. I'm not going to want it more than they do.
And that experience came from helping your father through that. That experience came from helping your brother through that. Um,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah, absolutely. And really, like, look at my ideal client now, a very powerful, high achieving male. And one of the things I'm doing is reading their energy and emotion, right?
Yeah.
And I'm calling bullshit on what they're putting out there in the world and what they're really feeling inside. I gained that expertise by reading my dad as a big burly logger when I was 6 years old.
Yeah, it's amazing. So how oh, that's the invitation part. What is open to receive mean as part of that?
Yeah. So the open to receive piece is I believe there has to be this rhythm of doing but also receiving. If we look at the root energies of masculine and feminine energies, right? It's not based just on our genitalia. It's based on masculine as a doing energy and feminine as a receiving energy. Masculine is future based, security, safety. The feminine energy is more dynamic, in the moment, adaptive, creative. We need both of those. We need a rhythm and sometimes a little more masculine, sometimes a little more feminine. We need a rhythm of those to be successful in life and for
Mhm.
life to be fun as well. So the role that I always played was the doer. I felt like I couldn't, nobody can do it as good as I can do it. So I'm just going to do it myself, right? How many of us have experienced that, right? That's sometimes how we become entrepreneurs, right?
Yeah.
And it's not a bad thing. Like all these limiting beliefs serve us until they don't, right? Because we had to like it gave us the drive to get ourselves out of certain life situations. So
Hmm.
I was that doer, 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 and I was terrible at receiving. So to me, if somebody tried to give me a gift, it felt like control. It felt like it had power over me. I felt like I owed them something. I felt like, and the reason I felt like I owed something
Oh,
is because I felt like I didn't deserve it. I didn't do anything for it.
well, say that again. Like that's big,
Hmm.
what you just said.
Hmm.
You couldn't receive because you didn't deserve it.
Right.
So
Ultimately,
people,
I didn't work for it.
so that's the bucket's closed. So it's really important that we talk about this because somewhere out there, there's somebody listening to this and says, I'm a guy, I don't relate to that masculine energy. I'm a woman, I don't relate to that feminine energy. You're not talking about gender, right?
Absolutely.
I mean, it's also referred to as like seminal and gestational energy in other circles, as well. But you're not talking about gender, are you?
Not at all. Absolutely. I'm talking about the energy. Like, am I doing or am I receiving? It's like a light switch. You cannot be doing
Yeah,
both in the
yeah,
exact same moment. When you're doing, you're not in the receiving, right? And when we're talking about business, we have to have that rhythm of both. And when we're talking about, a lot of the clients that I've worked with, they're so used to doing, but they're never sit back and receive, right? They're
yeah.
never open to that. So, and I had to learn how to receive, and I have the most amazing stories that drop, like things that happened and the things that dropped in, but only once I felt worthy of receiving. So I really had to, in order to learn to receive, I had to work on my worthiness.
Yeah.
So, and then I
Because
also,
we reject it, right? Like it's there. Like it's always dropping, but are we
Mhm,
open, right?
exactly, like this
That's
whole
another way
idea.
of thinking about it.
Yes, exactly. Are we open? Yeah. So I had an internal mantra, like even letting somebody hold the door for me. I wouldn't do that. Like I would be like, no, 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 I got it. Right. So I had to learn to open and receive. So I had this internal mantra that took me about a year to really like be able to hold and be comfortable with somebody having, giving me something or somebody doing something to help me. So I had this internal mantra of open your vagina and receive, Amanda. Open and receive, like receive, open.
And
And I would
that
say
makes it
that
much more
in,
intimate, right? Like when you
mm,
use that, like I mean, I remember the first time you said it, it shocked me. Because I'm a big guy, and someone saying "open my vagina" was like, "What are you talking about?" Like, right? What are you talking about?
yeah. So, well, what I mean by that is open yourself to receiving, right?
Yeah.
If the receiving is a feminine energy. If you're always in your doing, you're going to be depleted. You have to open to receive to be recharged. You have to to receive to allow gifts to come in, right?
Mm,
And the receiving, if we also just think about giving a gift to somebody, if we're the giver, we're in the masculine energy. What's it like to receive a gift, right? If we stop and think about that, when I have people do this as an exercise, like what's it feel like to give a gift versus what's it feel like to receive a gift? And most people say it feels good to be the giver, right? There's a different feeling to be a giver. It's not, when you're the receiver. And so when we're never the receiver, we don't allow somebody else to step into the giver role. We're taking that away from somebody. How dare us?
that's so powerful, and I learned that lesson a long time ago. Um, that many givers are saying thank you by giving,
Mhm. Right.
right? I mean, we say thank you in receiving, but those are words.
Different. Yeah.
It's being grateful is a giving energy.
Mhm.
Receiving that gratitude is something hard to do for all of us. I think a lot of us, it's like we don't come by it naturally.
Mhm.
Uh, Funny story. I used to take my brother, who was a med student at the time, to hockey games all the time. Like I'd buy the tickets, I'd buy everything. I was already running my business, so I had money and he didn't. And one time we go to a game, and he goes to the bar and buys a beer. And he says, "What do you want?" I said, "It's okay, I got it." And then we had a fight about who was going to get the bill for the beer. And he looked at me and he said, "You're an asshole." I'm like, what? What are you talking about? Like, just like, what are you talking about? He goes, I can't, I'm asking to buy my big brother a beer to say thank you for everything you've done. You won't even give me that. You're an asshole. That was me being closed off from receiving, right?
Yeah. Ouch. Ouch.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that's what a powerful story because like I can remember doing that. Like, and I can feel that in my belly and my heart as you tell me that story because I can remember doing that to people. And I wasn't doing it from a place of like I thought I was doing the right thing, right? By saying thank you to them and taking care of things. But really at the end of the day, I was judging them that they couldn't afford to buy me a cup of coffee or whatever, right?
Yeah.
Like, yeah, and we take away maybe the little thing that they could do to step in to be the giver. Maybe we can be a giver in a bigger way, but then when we deny them to step into that. So, well, good for him for calling you out on that and you learning that lesson so young too. Like that's a powerful lesson.
Yeah. Yeah. It's one that I've often said it's important to allow people to express their gratitude, and it's important to be able to receive it.
Mhm.
Um, and I think that's the difference between somebody who's like hypey knocking on the doors, markety knocking on the doors, projecting like, look how confident I am, versus, hey, I've got something to offer. Here it is.
Yeah.
Right?
Well, and I think that person knocking on the door, they're not carrying the vibration of confidence, right?
Yeah.
Like there's a difference. There's a difference. And
So
when you're
no, no, I don't I want to make sure that what changed in your life when you put these two thoughts together?
everything. Everything.
Yeah.
Oh my God. Like I can't even tell you the professional opportunities that dropped in. Like I can't sometimes I'm like, I'm trying to figure out who I want to be when I grow up because um the universe, I believe in definitely a higher power. So, God, something bigger than us, like just keeps putting me in situations that I'm like, oh my goodness. Like, and what's beautiful is I really believe in the hero's journey. And there's something about answering the call, and the mentors will always be there, right? And so the mentors show up. And it's about receiving from those mentors. If I wasn't able to receive from those mentors, then I wouldn't be successful in stepping into the roles. But a role drops in, and I'm like, okay, I have this person, this person, this person, this person that I can ask for help, right? Because there's also a piece of asking for help and then being open to receive it. I think sometimes when someone's carrying that energy of imposter syndrome, I see this in so many of my clients, they're so afraid to ask for help because they feel like they should know. There's no way we know everything, right? And that's one thing that I've learned from my clients who hold really important roles, CEOs of very large billion-dollar companies. And I thought before leaning in and coaching them, like they know everything. Well, there's areas that they don't know, but they leverage relationships, right? They authentically leverage relationships and they're okay asking for help in certain areas. And in other
Yeah.
areas, they're not. They feel like they need to, and that's where they're closed off. And that's where I remind them to open their vagina and receive. And sometimes I just text them the picture of a rose. And so, like, we have like that means when you see that rose, that means open your vagina and receive.
Yeah.
So, oftentimes I'm like, who's in control of this business right now? Who's in control? Right. And you're waiting for something to happen. Maybe it's a matter of opening to receive and waiting for the answer to drop in or waiting for the money to drop in. Like just the stories of the amount of money that's dropped in for myself and my clients and the opportunities that have dropped in are like beyond my wildest dreams, right? But if I was still in that old girl, God bless her, she worked her ass off to get where she was. Like, but I would not be friends with 25-year-old me. She was far too controlling, far too judgmental and just, go, go, go all the time. But she got me where I am today, and I'm really proud of her for that.
Yeah. Is this
But she's
something that
not who I was.
you have to remind yourself of this now too, right? Like it's not automatic.
I would say it's automatic now.
It is.
A
You've made it your
discomfort
habit, your go-to.
yeah, a discomfort might come up, a slight discomfort, and then I just have to be reminded. And then I love that I've built this amazing conscious community around me. And like my clients will call me on stuff. I'll be like, I don't know, it's making me a little uncomfortable. And like, and they'll reverse, open your vagina and receive, Amanda. Like, no, you're right. You're absolutely right. So like, you're getting the same version of Amanda no matter what, no
Mhm.
matter what. And so when I show up authentically, I invite unapologetically, invite others to do the same thing. Right. And conscious community to me is consciousness is just awareness. Like, are we all kind of playing by the same rules? And life is so much fun in the state of like wonder. And
Yeah.
we're extremely powerful and impactful, the impact that we're having in this world too. So open to receiving for me was like relationships dropped in, powerful relationships of people who are supporting me and coaching me as I'm stepping out into the world as in a different role.
That's beautiful.
Money dropped in, opportunities dropped in, so much.
I know, and I know this because of experience with you. We could do this for hours. So I'm going to say thank you for this. That's a good spot to leave it. And hopefully I'll bring you back again. What do you think?
Love it. Love it. And I love what you're doing. I so appreciate all your wisdom. We've only met each other a few times online. Never met in person, but it feels so like, you were a mentor and you were someone who was meant to show up in my life. So I so appreciate you, Govin.
Thank you. Likewise.